Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially from the perspective of UPSC Civil Service Examination. The first article is related to the climatic phenomena of El Nino Southern Oscillations and Indian Ocean Dipole. The second article deals with the issues with respect to the urban planning and development in India. The third article is related to the concept of CubeSats. The fourth article deals with the heat stress in India's megacities. The fifth article is with respect to the high import dependence of India on Chinese electronic and electrical products. Finally, in the Prelims Snippet sections, we'll have a look at some of the very important articles for the upcoming prelims exam. Now, coming to the very first article of the day, we have a good news from the Indian Meteorological Department, where the IMD has projected that India is going to have above normal monsoon rainfall this year, owing to the positive factors of La Nina and Indian Ocean Dipole. Now, we look into what La Nina is all about. See, the La Nina forms a part of the greater El Nino Southern Oscillations, right? We'll see what ENSO cycle is all about, what is Indian Ocean Dipole. Now, this is with respect to the GS1 climate phenomena geography. Coming to the ENSO cycle, that is El Nino Southern Oscillations. See, these are climatic events which are a result of the interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere. So, ENSO is a result of interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere, right? Now, this event takes place at a specific location on the planet, and that is the Pacific Ocean. That is specifically the southern equatorial Pacific Ocean. Just below the equator, you have this phenomena of ENSO which takes place. However, we need to keep in mind that it has global climatic effects. Though the process takes place at a particular location on the planet, that is in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, but it has sort of global ramifications. Now, why it results into? So, see, it is actually because of the uneven warming of waters on the ends of the Pacific Ocean. For example, we have here the eastern end of the Pacific Ocean, and here we have the western end. So we have got the uneven warming of the sea surface, and that results into the formation of ENSO cycles. Now, once you have got uneven warming, so definitely there would be a temperature difference, and this temperature difference would lead to the creation of pressure difference, right? So once you have the creation of pressure difference, it thus drives the atmospheric circulations, right? So let's say you have low pressure here, let's say you've got high pressure here, right? So high pressure, winds from high pressure come to the low pressure, and again winds then they diverge, and then they again go to the high pressure system. So this is basically a circulation. So it is because of, first you have the temperature difference, and then because of the temperature difference you have got the pressure conditions, and then you have got a circulation. Now see, we have got a word oscillations here, El Nino Southern Oscillations. The oscillation, the word oscillation means is that we have got 3 different phases in the ENSO cycle, right? The first phase is with respect to the neutral phase. The second is with respect to the El Nino phase. The third is with respect to the La Nina phase. Now, before we go ahead, we need to see that these 2 words, El Nino and La Nina, they are Spanish words. El Nino means little boy, and La Nina means little girl, right? So these are Spanish words. Now, before we start the discussion of these individual phases, we need to first have a look at the global movement of winds, right? So see, we have got a general movement of wind. This is the tropical region. You can just see in this image. And we all know that the earth rotates westward, right? From west to east. This is the direction. So this rotation of the earth causes winds to deflect in a particular direction in the tropical region, and that we have also discussed in the last Analyst, that it is known as the Coriolis force, right? So once you have got the winds which are coming towards the equator, they are deflected westward. You can see you have got the winds which are deflected westwards because of the rotation of the earth from west to east, right? Now these winds in this region, they are generally known as trade winds, and they travel the general movement is westwards, right? So this information is necessary to understand the concept of different phases, right? Now, talking about the first phase, that is a neutral phase. See, what happens is that we have got the general movement of trade winds towards the west. That is, trade winds are moving westwards. Now, once you have this eastern side of the Pacific, and here you have the western side of the Pacific. Now, once the trade winds move from east towards the west, they also drive with them the surface water, and the surface water is warm, right? So the warm water along the equator, that is from the South American coast towards the Asia, the warm water goes and it leads to the accumulation of warm water on the Western Pacific, right? The warm water gets accumulated here. Now, once the warm water, surface water gets accumulated, it leads to two conditions. Now, what are those two conditions? The first is the low pressure conditions. It is obvious that if you have warm water, it will lead to sort of low pressure, right? And on the western side, and then the water would tend to evaporate, right? Now, if water is actually coming from the eastern side, it has to be replaced by some other water. So the cold water from deep interiors, it comes up to replace the warm water. And this phenomena is known as upwelling of cold water. This happens on the eastern Pacific, right? Now, once you have got the low pressure over here, the water evaporates and then it leads to the formation of clouds, right? Once the clouds form, you have got divergence into two branches, one towards the east, one towards the west. Now, this branch goes here and then it subsides here. Subsidence of air takes place, leading to the conditions of high pressure. So you have got high pressure condition there. So once you have the low pressure system here, it leads to the evaporation of water, then the formation of clouds, then you have got the movement of winds in this direction, and then you have got the subsidence of winds leading to the creation of high pressure condition. Now, this cell, the circular pattern, is known as the Walker cycle, right? So just understand that we have got this Walker cycle. So this condition is known as the system of neutral phase, right? And this neutral phase is associated with that of Walker cycle. Now, what are the weather conditions associated with the neutral phase? It is but obvious that if you have got low pressure conditions here, it will lead to sort of warm and wet conditions, rainfall along the Western Pacific, that is Northern Australia, and you have got the Indonesian and other Southeast Asian countries, right? And then you have got the subsidence of air over here on the South American coast, and it leads to the cold and dry conditions on the Eastern Pacific, on the South American coast. Now, these are the conditions with respect to the neutral phase. Now, let's imagine that if this neutral phase gets sort of intensified. So, what happens is that this low pressure, which is being created on the western side, it actually intensifies. So, intensification of low pressure takes place, and this leads to more attraction of winds from all the direction, and then greater sort of evaporation, and then greater subsidence on the eastern side of the Pacific. Now, this intensification of the Walker cycle is nothing but the La Nina. So, if you have got the neutral phase, and that is, we know that it corresponds to the Walker cycle, that intensification of the Walker cycle takes place, then it results in the formation of the La Nina phase. Now, it is but obvious that if you will have extreme low pressure conditions here and very high pressure conditions here, they'll have weather effectivities. Now, what are the weather effectivities? The first is heavy rainfall and flooding on the western side, right? So there are cities, you must have seen that there are floodings in sort of Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries. So it is because of the La Nina. Then it also leads to very cold, dry and drought-like conditions on the eastern side. See, heavy subsidence takes place here, and once the warm water actually goes from the eastern side to the Pacific side, very cold water comes on the surface, and that is upwelling. Now, once cold water comes to the surface, it leads to the development of desiccating effect, right? It has a desiccating effect. It leads to dry conditions and thus drought-like conditions. So you have instances where the Peruvian coast also experiences sort of drought-like conditions. Thus, what we can say is that the La Nina phase is nothing but intensified Walker cycle, right? So that is neutral phase and the La Nina phase. Now, coming to the El Nino phase. See, in El Nino, what happens is, we already saw that the general movement of the trade winds was westward, right? Once you have got the sort of weakening of the trade winds, and in some cases, once you have got the reversal of the trade winds, then it leads to a condition of El Nino, right? So, why does it take place? See, we all know that the trade winds, the source of the trade winds is nothing but the subtropical high pressure belts. So the subtropical high pressure belt, they are around 30 degrees south and north, right? So that becomes the source of the trade winds. Now, once you have got the warming of Pacific Ocean, these subtropical high pressure belts, they weaken. Once they weaken, that is the origin of the trade winds, you have got the weakening of the trade winds, and in some cases even reversal of the trade winds. Now, in this case, what would happen is, see, the warm water would actually move from Western Pacific to the Eastern Pacific. So you have got the Western Pacific and the warm water would move towards the Eastern Pacific. Right. So there's a reversal of the direction. Right. Once you have got the movement of warm water, the warm water would actually accumulate here and lead to the evaporation of water and then condensation of water forming clouds. Now this would again go up and there would be sort of divergence in different direction, different branches, and again there would be subsidence here, subsidence on the high and would lead to the creation of high pressure conditions on the Western Pacific. So it is nothing but the opposite of what happened in the neutral and the La Nina phase. So if we summarize, what we can say is that you have got sort of high pressure conditions over here on the Western Pacific and the low pressure conditions on the Eastern Pacific. Now this is nothing but the shifting of low pressure. We have already seen that. Now see, once this process takes place, what weather effectivities would it have? Now this is obvious that once you will have high pressure conditions over here, the Australian region, the Indonesia would have sort of dry conditions. They would have dry conditions, drought-like conditions, right? And in some cases, you must have seen in the news that we have forest fires or the bush fires, right, in Australia. And it would, on the other hand, lead to wet conditions on the South American coast. You have got the flood-like conditions in the country of Peru, right? So you have got flood-like conditions in Peru. This is nothing but the opposite of what happened in La Nina, right? So if we summarize, we can say that it is nothing but the reversed Walker cycle, right? So these are the effectivities associated with the El Nino, La Nina and neutral phase. Now, concept of Indian Ocean Dipole. Now, what is this Indian Ocean Dipole? See, you have got the Indian Ocean, right? We have got the eastern side and we have got the western side. Now, the periodic change in the temperature, in the sea surface temperature on the eastern and the western side. Sometimes the eastern side becomes warmer than the western side. Sometimes the eastern side becomes colder than the warmer side, the western side. So that is what the change, the constant change is actually known as the Indian Ocean Dipole. The word dipole, it means two opposite ends, the warm and the cold. Now this also has three phases. The first is the neutral phase, the second is the positive phase, and the third is the negative phase. Now please understand that all of these phases, each they occur after a gap of 3 to 5 years. That is what the frequency is all about. And it actually oscillates from negative to neutral to positive phase, right? Now talking about the individual different phases of Indian Ocean Dipole, the first we have is the neutral phase. So what happens in the neutral phase is that we have got the Eastern Indian Ocean, which becomes relatively warmer than the Western Indian Ocean, right? So once Eastern Indian Ocean becomes relatively warmer, you have the creation of low pressure conditions here, right? And thus you have got the warm and wet conditions in the Australia, in the northern Australia, in the Indonesian region, in comparison to the Indian region. So Indian region is comparatively dry in the neutral phase. Now, what happens in the negative phase? In the negative phase, this neutral phase, it actually intensifies. Okay? You have got the intensification which takes place. Now, how does this take place? The Eastern Indian Ocean region, it becomes too warm, right? And the Western Indian Ocean becomes relatively very cold, and thus it can lead to a situation where you have got the flood-like situations in the northern Australia, Indonesia and Southeast Asia, and you can have drought-like conditions in India, right? Now, what is the next phase? The next phase is of the positive Indian Ocean Dipole. In the positive Indian Ocean Dipole, what happens is that the Western Indian Ocean becomes relatively warmer than the Eastern Indian Ocean. Right. So you have got the Eastern Indian Ocean, which is somewhat cooler than the Western Indian Ocean. Now this is but obvious. Once you will have got the warmer conditions here, it would have sort of low pressure conditions here and high pressure conditions here. Right. So what effectivity would it have? See, first of all, it would lead to sort of drier conditions in northern Australia, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and it would lead to wet conditions in India, right? Warm and wet conditions by southwest monsoon winds. And once they go into the phase of sort of positive Indian Ocean Dipole, they actually carry the rain-bearing winds with them. And thus it leads to greater monsoon in the positive Indian Ocean phase, right? Now, what is the impact of Indian monsoon because of the neutral phase of ENSO, the La Nina phase and the El Nino phase? See, in the neutral phase of ENSO, what we have is a favorable condition, that is normal rainfall we have. We have got above normal or average rainfall. What happens in the La Nina phase is that we have got excessive Indian monsoon. What it means is we have got surplus. Why surplus? That because there's a development of extreme low pressure conditions on the Western Pacific, right? And high pressure conditions on the Eastern Pacific. Then the El Nino phase, in this we have got deficit, very less rainfall, leading to drought-like conditions in India, right? Because of the development of high pressure conditions on the Western Pacific. Now, talking about these interactions, see, what can happen is that we studied two processes, the Indian Ocean Dipole and the ENSO. Now, they can actually interact with each other, right? So, it was in the year 1998 that it was predicted that India is going to have a very severe sort of El Nino phase, right? But the positive IOD was also there. So the positive IOD actually counteracted the negative effects of El Nino, and we had a normal monsoon back then, right? Then what you can have is, if let's say you have got the La Nina phase and along with that you have got negative IOD, so the negative IOD can suppress the La Nina phase and it can again result into normal rainfall, right? So what we see is this time the IMD has predicted positive Indian Ocean Dipole and plus the La Nina phase. So let's hope and see that the India receives good rainfall, and thus it benefits especially the farmers of the country and results in greater agriculture productivity. Now, before we proceed to the next article, we have got a very important question. This is from the 2011 prelims, right? So the question is, the La Nina is suspected to have caused recent floods in Australia. How is La Nina different from El Nino? The first is La Nina is characterized by unusually cold ocean temperature in equatorial Indian Ocean, whereas El Nino is characterized by unusually warm ocean temperature in the equatorial Pacific. Then El Nino has adverse effect on the southwest monsoons of India, but the La Nina has no effect on the monsoon climate. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? So just mark your answer and post it in the comment section. So the next article is related to the urban planning and development. See, recently India has witnessed 4 serious mishaps. The first is with respect to the Ghatkopar, where advertisement hoarding collapsed and led to the killing of so many people. The second is with respect to the Dombivli boiler blast, which claimed a lot of life. The third is with respect to the fire at a gaming zone in Rajkot, which claimed a life of many people. Then recently we had the incident where in Delhi you had a fire in the hospital where so many infants were killed. Now what we see is that these are man-made disasters, and this is because of our deficiency in the urban planning and management, right? So what we'll see is how the urban planning should be done, what are the legal sort of backings in India, and we'll see what are the issues associated and what is the way forward, right? Now this is with respect to the GS3, economic development and urbanization. Now coming to the word urbanization, what does it refer to? See, it refers to the gradual movement of human population from the rural areas to the urban areas, right? The gradual movement of people or human population from the rural areas to the urban areas, that is known as the urbanization. Now this is a global phenomena, right? It happens everywhere, right? And it coincides with economic development. As urbanization takes place, we see that economic development also takes place. Now if we go by the data by the United Nations Population Fund Agency, we can see that it has projected that the urban population in India is projected to increase from 44% in 2023 to in 2030 it would be 54%, and in 2050 it would be 68%. So it would be 68% of the total population. So 68% would be the urban population out of the total population, and the rest would be living in the rural areas. What we see is that it is almost equivalent to 70%. So 70% of the human population in India would live in urban areas. Now this becomes really important that we focus on urban planning and development, robust urban planning and development. Now what are the legal or institutional framework with respect to the urban planning and development in India? See, the very first is the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now this constitutionalized the urban local governance system in India. This led to the constitutionalization of the urban local governance in India. It also led to a framework for providing the working of municipalities, right? Next is we have got the Article 243W. See, this deals with the power, authorities and responsibilities of the municipalities, and it also gives the power to the state legislatures to endow these municipalities with sufficient powers so that they can function as units of self-government, right? So the state legislatures can make law and give powers to these municipalities so that they can work as an autonomous institutions, and then promote the development of the local areas. Then we have got the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now, this is the nodal ministry as far as the formulation of policies and plans are concerned. So, the overall policy making with respect to the urban development in India is taken over by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now, then we have got different acts, different statutory laws by the state governments. These are known as Town Planning Acts or Development Authorities Act. What it does is that it makes town planning authorities and development authorities. These have the power to regulate the urban development in India, to frame policies according to the laws of respective states. Then we have got the municipalities, as we have just seen. Municipalities are at the forefront of implementing all these policies, right? They have direct interactions with the people. So this becomes really important, right? They also have got regulatory powers with them. So municipalities are at the grassroots level, and then they implement the sort of policies of different tiers of the government. Now, coming to the most important part, which this article also focuses upon, that is the National Building Code. See, we have got a National Building Code by the Bureau of Indian Standards. Bureau of Indian Standards made this National Building Code. What is this code all about? See, it is a holistic code which talks about the building standards which should be abided by. Any building, if its construction is being taking place, it should abide by these provisions which are highlighted in the National Building Code. Now, this deals with, obviously, if it has holistic provisions, it deals with different norms. For example, it has structural norms. Let's say you have got earthquake prone regions. So over there, the National Building Code specifies that the building should be made in such a way that they are sort of resilient to the earthquake or floods. Then you have got fire safety norms. The building should be made in such a way that they can deal with abrupt fires. Then you have got accessibility norms. What do you mean by accessibility norms? That is, the sort of people with disabilities can easily access these buildings, right? So we have got different sort of norms highlighted in the National Building Code itself. Please note that the compliance of the National Building Code is mandatory in India, right? Every building has to be compliant of the provisions of the National Building Code. Now, next is the building bylaws. They are nothing but they source their sort of provisions from the National Building Code, right? And include provisions and provide that what should be the floor size, right? What should be the structure with respect to the stairs, right? So building bylaws are made by the respective state governments in accordance with the National Building Code. That is what the legal and the institutional framework is all about. Now, talking about the issues with respect to the urban planning and development in India, we have got the unplanned urban sprawl. So according to a data by Niti Aayog, it says that almost 50% of the towns in India, they don't have master plans with them. Now, master plan are the long-term strategic plans. They actually project how the urbanization would take place. So almost 50% of the towns don't even have a master plan with them, right? Now, this leads to a condition of lack of basic amenities. For example, lack of water facilities, lack of sanitation facilities, lack of sort of water storage facilities. So it leads to this condition. Then you have got traffic congestions. Why traffic congestions take place? See, you have got unplanned road network, right? So because of unplanned road network, there is congestion. Then you have got lack of public transportation. So all these things add up to make the traffic congestion. Then you have got the encroachment of green spaces. See, in the recent years, in the recent decades, what has happened is that the land has become a commodity, right? And there has been a privatization of land. Please understand that we have got this local authorities in different towns and we have got the real estate agents. Now there is a development of nexus between these two and it is leading to the encroachment of green spaces. For example, the banks of river, right? Ideally no construction should be there, but there is a sort of nexus between the local authorities and these real estate agents and it is leading to illegal or unethical construction at these pristine locations, fragile ecosystems, right? Then we have got issues related to affordable housing. According to a data by the India Brand Equity Foundation, in 2019, India had shortage of 19 million houses, right? So there people need affordable houses. A large segment of our population is sort of having below that economic parameter, right? They are mostly of low and middle income category, right? So what we need to see is that because of this, what happens is that there is a growth of slums, right? Slums, and these slums are characterized by overcrowding, unhygienic conditions, right? Lack of sanitation. So this also leads to spread of diseases. And please understand that these slums are nothing but the breeding ground of crimes. For example, human and drug trafficking. So we have got crimes against women, right? So it leads to social issues and conflicts. Moreover, if people have to be sort of spend a lot of money on their housing, it leads to high economic burden on people, right? And it hinders their social mobility. That is from one particular economic classes to a higher economic class. It actually hinders that. Then we have got inadequate infrastructure in the cities. We have got infrastructure issues. For example, we have got burdened power supply. We have got overloaded sewage systems, right? So because the systems are not in sync with the population, right? There's a lack of capacity when it comes to the infrastructure. Then it also increases inequality. How? See, it is the poor people or the low income people who are actually dependent on these public amenities, more dependent. So if you don't have these amenities, it disproportionately affects these low income group people, right? And then it increases the gap between the rich and the poor. Then we have got the issues with respect to the environment degradation. Once you have got traffic congestions, it would automatically lead to vehicular emissions, right? Sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, greenhouse gas emission. So you've got suspended particulate matter. So this leads to sort of health issues also, right? Then we have got inadequate solid waste management. You see all around, there's waste littering around. So that leads to sort of diseases. Then we have got the issue of concretization. So concretization means that the green spaces, the green spaces are now being covered with concrete buildings, and that is leading to a concept of urban heat islands, right? Then we have got lack of public participation. See, according to Transparency International, it has been said that the urban planning and development in India has primarily been bureaucratic, has been top driven, right? What it means is that it does not include the say of the people. There is exclusion of community needs because socio-economic needs of especially the lower segment of the society is not being considered. Then we have got hampered decision making. Once you have got sort of this nexus between the local authorities and the real estate agents, it leads to corruption, and this corruption leads to sort of lower decision making, slower decision making, and then it ultimately affects the people in the cities, right? So what we see is that there are a lot of issues, but these are the general issues which you can quote in your exam if a question comes. Now talking about the policies. See, the first policy with respect to the urban planning and development in India is with respect to National Urban Development Planning Framework. See, this policy framework is the overarching framework when it comes to the sort of the principles and the visions of urban development in India, right? It is primarily based on three features. The first is transit-oriented development. That is, that development should take place along the public transportation systems, around the public transportation systems. Second is mixed use development. That is, there should be a sort of integration of commercial, residential, recreational spaces, right? Third is urban regeneration. That is, already the urban areas, they should be made resilient, right? They should be actually enhanced. Their quality of life should be enhanced. So we have got the transit oriented development, we have got the mixed use development, and we have got the urban regeneration. These are the three principles or features of this policy framework. Coming to the smart cities mission. See, smart cities mission, it was aimed to actually transform 100 cities in India as the engine of innovation, right, as the engine of growth, right, to transform them. Then we have got the Amrut, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. This primarily focuses on the basic amenities, so as to provide clean water and sanitation, sewage facilities, right. Then we have got Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, housing for all. This gives sort of financial incentives to people from particular segment of the society so that they can actually they can own their own house, affordable housing, right. Then we have got Hriday, that is Heritage City Development and Augmentation Yojana, right. So this focuses upon the heritage cities. the objective is to actually integrate the historical value and to promote the tourism in those cities, right? Then we have got Deen Dayal Upadhyay National Urban Livelihood Mission. Now this focuses upon the skill building aspect, right? And then also providing microfinancing facilities to the urban poor so that they can have their livelihood generation, right? Then we have got various initiatives by the state governments. We have got the public-private partnerships in the waste management, right? Then we have got special purpose vehicle. So these special purpose vehicle are made for specific infrastructure projects in different cities, and they are actually very efficient, right? And they are known to implement a project on a quick basis, on a faster basis, right? So that is what the SPV is all about. Then we have got the beautification drives. So we have got green spaces in the cities. So beautification drives takes place. That is what we call this as sort of different initiatives by the state governments. Now, what should be the way forward for robust urban planning and development in India? The first is evidence-based planning. What it means is that you should have data, right? For example, data related to demographics, the population, the human population, data related to the migration patterns between the rural and the urban areas, or from the urban to the rural areas, right? Or data related to the economic activities, so that you can integrate that data in your policy framework, right? For example, the World Bank report, a World Bank report of 2021, it utilized the data of NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, and it came to the conclusion that almost 43% of urban population in India lives in slums. So that is because that is based on the data which was provided by the NSSO. So there needs to be an integration of data. Second is that we need to have these master plans or strategic plans incorporating the population projections, so that proper utilization of resources can take place. If we know that the UNFP has said that by the year 2050, 70% of India's population would live in urban areas, we need to adequately sort of give resources to the urban areas, right? Prioritize these resources. Then you've got performance monitoring with proper key performance indicators. For example, based on air quality, based on sanitation, based on water quality. So on different parameters, we can have a performance monitoring of different cities. For example, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, it has the ease of living index. So it actually lists cities on the basis of how they're performing on different parameters. Then we have got the next step as infusing transparency in urban governance. What we see is, as I have told, that there is an unholy nexus between the real estate agents and the local authorities. So there needs to be a single window transparent clearing mechanism, right? So that faster approvals can take place and all the things should be under the public scrutiny. That is the first thing. Then there should be the declaration of no construction sites. If you see that there is a fragile environment, fragile ecosystem, for example, the banks of the river or any forested land, it should be declared as no construction site. Then there needs to be sort of promotion of sustainability. What do we mean by that? We need to incorporate climate risk assessments. See, we should actually know that which cities are vulnerable to which sort of climate risks. For example, which cities are affected, can be affected by extreme weather events or flooding or rising sea levels, right? So that information can be incorporated into the planning framework. Then we need to have mapping of environment resources through the use of satellites, through the use of imagery, geospatial data, so that we can have an inventory of these other resources, natural resources, with respect to the urban areas. Then sustainable and diversified funding is important. We already have the concept of green bonds for environment sustainability project. Then international financial institutions finances can be taken with the help of international financial institutions, so that it can enhance the transparency and ensure that there is sort of faster project execution. Then utilizing innovation and technology, this becomes crucial. We have got different technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So we need to incorporate all these technologies so that a more efficient urban transformation can take place. So there's a suggestion that we can have integrated data platforms. For example, data from public utility, like electricity systems or public transportation systems or any different intelligent transport systems should be integrated, right? And then that data should be used to make other urban policies. So what we see is that definitely India has a lot of issues with respect to urban planning, and it is not like that we don't have laws. We have got enough laws, but the execution what we fail is on the execution part. So there needs to be a proper implementation framework, and we need to abide by these. We can incorporate these suggestions and ensure that these such mishaps which have occurred recently, they don't repeat. Now coming to the next article, we have got NASA, which has launched 2 satellites, and both these satellites are CubeSats. We look into what CubeSats are all about, right? And these satellites which NASA has launched, it is for measuring the heat emitted at the poles, that is at the Arctic and at the Antarctic. Now this mission is known as the Polar Radiant Energy in the Far Infrared Experiment. Now this is with respect to GS3 Science and Technology. Now coming to this topic, CubeSats. What are CubeSats? See, CubeSats are small satellites, and they come into the category of the class of nanosatellites. Now, what are nanosatellites? Those satellites whose weight is between 1 kg to 10 kg. Those are nanosatellites, right? Now, these have wide range of applications, from observing Earth to different things, and they use standard size. We look into what standard size is all about, and it resembles a shoebox. So this pre-fire mission, it is sort of like this, where the satellite looks like a shoebox. Now, what are the key features of the CubeSats? See, as I told, that they have a standard size. We have 1 unit of a CubeSat, which is known as 1 unit. Now, this implies a sort of a cube having 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters and 10 centimeters. That is, the volume is 10 into 10 into 10. This is 1 unit of a CubeSat. Now, on the basis of this sort of 1 unit, we have got multiple units. So it can be sort of 1 unit, it can be 1.5 unit, it can be 2 units, 3 units, 6 unit, whatever, right? So this is what we have got, the standard size. Next is, because of its size, small size, right, it is significantly cheaper to develop, right, and launch as compared to traditional satellites. Obviously the size is much smaller, easy to assemble, right? Then we have got short development time frame. The ease of development of these CubeSats, because of the standard size, makes them sort of the faster development for these CubeSats, right? So it leads to faster development of CubeSats because you have got standard size with you, right? Then we have got educational use. It is ideal for universities and research institutions. As see, these research institutions, and especially in India, like countries like India, we have got these research institutions and universities which have a funding crunch. So these are affordable, right? So they can be easily accessible, and then it leads to sort of development of scientific research by these universities and research institutions. Now, what is the significance of these CubeSats? See, the first is that it has led to democratization of space. What it means is, previously you used to have limited players. Now, because of these CubeSats, you have got research institutions, universities, and even individual developers who can now make CubeSats and contribute to the research. So it has led to opening of space exploration. Then we have got technological innovation. See, these CubeSats, they can be fitted with appropriate technology, and it has been seen that it has led to disruptive technological gains when it comes to Earth observing, when it comes to sort of measuring the heat emitted from particular locations of the Earth. So it is leading to sort of technological innovations. We have got the examples with respect to miniaturized electronics and spacecraft systems, right? Then we have got Earth observation. So because of the faster sort of development, faster assembly of these CubeSats and small size, they are also being used for Earth observation, for example, monitoring the environmental changes or tracking the agriculture resources. Then we have got these research institutions, they are utilizing this CubeSats in order to explore sort of more domains when it comes to microgravity, space weather, and other phenomena. So what we see is, definitely it has led to opening of the space exploration, and it has led to sort of inclusion of more players in the space development. Then what are the issues with respect to these CubeSats? See, please understand, it has a very small size, right? It has a very small size, and you have got power limitations associated with the CubeSats. So it actually has limited capability when compared to the larger satellites. So it cannot carry a sort of more instruments, it can only carry few instruments. Then it has lower transmission rates, right? Next is space debris. As more and more you have got CubeSats which are orbiting around the Earth, there might be sort of a position, there might be a case where a collision can take place, right? So it can also affect the other spacecrafts, other satellites, right? We also have one of the very important phenomena known as Kessler's syndrome. Now, I want you guys to actually define it and post in the comment section. What do we mean by Kessler syndrome, right? Next is that when it comes to the regulation, please understand that the regulation with respect to the larger satellites is clear, and there are no confusions with respect to the regulations of these larger satellites. But when it comes to the smaller satellites, the regulation domain is still evolving, right? So it is still evolving, and thus it is leading to potential challenges as more and more players are making their CubeSats and they are launching it to the space, and thus it can lead to sort of more collisions also. Then sustainability. See, understand, there needs to be the development of proper deorbiting mechanism. Once a CubeSat reaches to the end of its life, there needs to be the development of proper deorbiting mechanism so that it can fall back on the Earth, right? So that should be done so that it can avoid contributing to space debris. So what we see is that definitely, despite these challenges, these CubeSats have they have a lot of potential, and what we need is that we need to have proper evolving norms for them, right? As if we talked about the standard size, right? So we need to have proper standardized mechanisms for these CubeSats so that more participatory development can take place, as it is more affordable, as it is more accessible to different people. So what we need is we need to actually propel the development of these CubeSats, and we need to make sure that we have got proper institutionalized frameworks for the launch of these CubeSats. So the next article is with respect to the concept of heat stress. So a recent study by the Center for Science and Environment has come to the conclusion that there has been an increasing heat stress in the megacities of India. Now we look into what this heat stress is all about. Now this is with respect to GS3 environment. Now see, what heat stress is? It is the worsening of heat conditions. When the heat conditions worsen, that is what we call as heat stress. Now this has been witnessed, it's being witnessed in the megacities of India. We have got Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, right? So all these cities are witnessing the heat stress. So there might, why only the megacities? There are specific reasons to it. So primarily the first reason is the rising relative humidity. What is humidity? Relative humidity is the amount of the ratio of the amount of water vapor which a particular air column holds to the maximum capacity it can hold, right? That is what the relative humidity is all about. So there has been an increasing relative humidity, and study has also highlighted that there is 5 to 10% rise in the average relative humidity across these cities. It also says that in the last decade, in comparison to the last decade, the relative humidity in Hyderabad has become 10% higher. Right, there has been 10% increase when it comes to the relative humidity in Hyderabad. Now, this number 10% is for Hyderabad. We also have got 8% for Delhi. We have got 7% for Mumbai and 5% for sort of Kolkata. What we see is that there has been increasing relative humidity. Second is that there are warmer nights. At nights, the earth radiates its heat, right? What is being said in the report is that the rate of emission, the radiation of the heat out from the land, has been slower in comparison to what it was a decade ago, right? So it is leading to sort of warmer nights. Now, we have got this concept of heat index, which actually measures this heat stress, right? So we are using this heat index to measure the heat stress. It actually measures the discomfort because of this heat. So if you look into the chart in front of you, you will see that there has been sort of drop in the temperature from the daytime peak to the nighttime low, right? So look at the data from 2014 to 23. So for Hyderabad, right? So there has been a drop from 13.7 degrees Celsius to sort of 10.6 degrees Celsius. So there has been a drop. It means that the nights are becoming more warmer, right? Now, both these high relative humidity and warmer nights are attributed to the effect of urban heat islands. That's the reason I told that this phenomena of heat stress is only being witnessed in the megacities, because they are also sort of having the effect of urban heat island effect. Now, what is this urban heat island effect? See, generally the studies have shown that in comparison to the rural environment, the relative temperatures of the urban environment are higher. And that is because of the modified land surface of the buildings in the urban areas, right? So because of this, we have got the effect of urban heat islands. Now, you can see in this image that you have got sort of a description where the temperature variation is being shown, right? So you have got buildings and the temperature rises as the concrete structure rises, right? So it says that the dark roads and the asphalt parking lots they retain heat. Then we have got dark rooftops, they retain heat. Then we have got lack of trees means less shade and less evapotranspiration. Which helps to cool the air, right? Heat trapped by the building keeps the urban cores warmer at night. Then we have got waste heat from factories, buildings, vehicles. This add to the effect of heat. Then we have got impermeable surfaces reduce the surface moisture. So this is what the increase in the relative temperature of these concrete structures in the city gives the effect to sort of the urban heat island. Now this increasing trapping of heat leads to sort of increase. It is because of the increase in the build-up area. You have got more concrete structures, so they absorb the dark gray structures. They absorb more heat, and they are unable to release at the same pace. Then we have got declining green cover because you are encroaching the lands, right? You are encroaching the green spaces and you are constructing buildings. Then we have got congestion. Obviously, we have got, it leads to a condition of sort of, once you have traffic congestions, there would be vehicular emissions, and those release sort of gases, greenhouse gases. It leads to warming conditions. Again, it accentuates this problem of urban heat islands. Then heat absorption by urban structures. As you will make more concrete structures, it would lead to greater sort of heat. Then we have got heat generated by human activities. We have got industries, we have got different processes which take place around the city that add to the process, right? So that is what the trapping of heat does. Now this heat stress, what it does is that it compromises a very important mechanism in the human body, and that is sweating, right? Sweating. See, understand, once a human sweats, you have got the evaporation, and then the body naturally cools. But if you have got high relative humidity, what would happen is that the body won't be able to sweat, right? And there would be sort of body reactions to it, right? And it would be sort of leading to severe health risks. In moderate cases, it can lead to nausea, conditions of nausea. In severe cases, it can lead to heat stroke, right? So it is primarily affecting, this heat stress is primarily affecting the human populations, right? So what we see is there is a need for proper heat management plans, right? In order to have a situation where these green spaces, where these urban spaces also sort of can have a situation where heat is not trapped, right? So there needs to be enhanced green spaces, proper green parks should be there, right? There needs to be forestation, that is urban forestry, right? Then there needs to be alternate building materials. We can use reflective tiles on the terrace. We can use those paints which are reflective, right? Then we need to use electric vehicles, right? So that they don't contribute into the vehicular pollution. Next is there needs to be water reservoirs so that they can absorb the excess heat. Then we should regulate the use of air conditioners. See, air conditions are one of the prime reasons for the heat which is exhausted in the urban areas, right? So what we see is that warm heat which comes out from the compressor. There is a proposal that the minimum temperature of the ACs should be at 24 degrees Celsius. It should not be lesser than that, right? So what we need to have is we need to have proper regulatory mechanisms. So what we see is that this heat stress is a serious grave danger to the human health, and we need to adopt these practices so that we can mitigate this crisis and ultimately make sure that our urban spaces they don't become sort of heat islands, right? So the next topic is with respect to the import dependence which India has on China, especially with respect to the electronics and electrical items. So this newspaper article, it gives us very important data points with respect to the trade imbalance which India has. Now this is with respect to GS3, trade and manufacturing government interventions. Now talking about this article in particular, the information provided, it says that in the financial year 2024, what we see is that China has again become India's top trading partner, and this is the 6th time in the last 10 years that China has taken this place. Now what we need to keep in mind that this top trading partner, it does not mean that India is sort of exporting much to the China. What it means is that it is because of the exceptionally high volume of imports which India has from China, right? And the report also says that India's trade deficit with China has been widening the fastest if we compare with the other trading partners, right? So the exports from China to India, they are increasing a lot, and the exports from India to China, they are not increasing much, right? So India's relationship with the US is just the opposite, where the exports to the US from India, they have been increasing relatively higher at a higher pace, while the imports from the US, they are not increasing with the same pace, right? So if we look at the chart, what we see is the chart one. It shows the India's export and import in $1 billion from US and China. So just look at this line. So imports from the US, they have been increasing, but the exports to the US, they have been increasing with a rapid pace, right? Then when it comes to China, the exports to China have been stagnant from India, while the imports from China, they are just humongous, right? So what we see is that the trade deficit with China has been increasing, right? So if you just look at this chart too, what it shows is that it shows a trade deficit or surplus of important partners of India, right? You would see that we have got China and the US at extreme ends, right? We have got US here, we have got China here. With US, India has a trade surplus of $36.7 billion. And with China, we have got a trade deficit of $85.1 billion. So this is a huge deficit, right? And what the report goes into is that the majority of the items which the India imports from China can be classified as electronic and electrical items. So just look at this chart 3. Right, it is a tree map of the top 20 commodities which India has imported from China and from the period 15 to 2024. So you see that $75.4 billion were spent in the mobile and telephones. Automatic data processing machines and units, $37.4 billion. Then you have got semiconductor devices, $28.1 billion. Then you have got electronic integrated circuits, $26.9 billion. So what we see is that India has a great dependency when it comes on these electronic items, right? Moreover, China is a major source for most of these electrical and electronic items with very few alternatives. What it means is primarily our import basket is not diversified. We are just dependent on China, right? We are not dependent on any country. So look at chart 4. It gives item-wise imports from China in $1 billion and India's dependency on China for that product in percentage share. Look for this mobile and telephone. 54% of the India's imports of the mobile are actually from China, right? Then we have got electronic integrated circuits, 32%, automatic data processing, 56%. Then you've got semiconductor diodes, 70%. This is the dependency which India has when it comes to sort of on China. Now, considering all these things, the government has also taken a note of this, and the government has also been sort of investing and making policies. For example, we have got the production linked incentive scheme for the mobile manufacturing. We have got the national semiconductor mission. So it remains to be seen how these policies work, but definitely India has been increasing the domestic manufacturing. What we need to do is that there needs to be sort of more financial resources, technological incentives for the industries so that we can minimize this trade dependence and ultimately end it, right? So we need to have those policies so that our own industries, domestic industries, can compete with the global players. So coming to the prelim snippet sections, we have got these articles which are very important for the upcoming prelims. So the first article is with respect to the Chabahar port in Iran. See, UPSC has been in a tendency to ask questions of those places or those geographies which have been in the news, right? So it becomes important for us to have a good understanding of the map, right? So that if a question comes, we can easily attempt it. Now, first of all, India has recently concluded an agreement for the expansion of the facilities at the Chabahar port. Now, the sole objective of India was to increase the transit corridor to Afghanistan and then to Central Asian countries, right? So, what we see is that we have here the sort of Chabahar port, and it is then connected to the city of Zahedan. Now, Zahedan is a city which lies at the triangular intersection of Iran, Afghanistan and Pakistan, right? Then you have got a rail line to Zaranj. Now, please note that India has constructed a highway from Zaranj to Dilaram, right? India has done that. Now, coming to the specific geography of Iran, we have got these Elbrus mountains, two mountain ranges which actually form the border of Iran. We have got the Elbrus mountains, we have got the Zagros mountains, right? Then we have got this sort of two desert, that is Dasht-e Kavir and Dasht-e Lut, right? These are the two deserts. We have got the important city of Isfahan, we have got Tehran, right? We have got Mashhad. Then what you need to keep in mind is we have got here the Chabahar port, and it is very near to the port of Gwadar, which is in Pakistan and which has been funded by, the development has been funded by China. We also have another port of Bandar-e-Abbas, right? Now over here we have got the Strait of Hormuz. Now this becomes really important because Iran was attacking US sort of ships through its drones once we had this Houthi rebels and the fights going on, right? So this becomes really important. Please note that the Strait of Hormuz is between Iran and Oman. This part is of Oman. So please remember that. That is what you need to know about the Iran. Also, you can add is the surrounding countries. The first is Pakistan. Then you have got Afghanistan. Then you have got Turkmenistan. Then you've got Azerbaijan. Then you have got Turkey. Then you have got Iraq. So that is what you need to know about Iran. Now coming to the next article, we have got the concerns associated with eucalyptus, the plant eucalyptus. So see, the Kerala State Forest Department has been reforesting eucalyptus, and you have got certain environment conservationists who have come and said that you should not do this. Now we'll see what this plant is all about. So it was primarily introduced in India in the 18th century. It was taken from the Australia. Now, so it is an exotic species, primarily for the forestation of the sort of the roads alongside the roads and for urban forestry. Now it has economic benefits because there are a lot of sort of paper and pulp industries which are dependent on eucalyptus, right? It is also a sort of a firewood, right? Then, but at the same time, we have got the concerns with respect to its invasive nature and its environment impact. So if we talk about the arguments in favor of eucalyptus, the first is it has a fast growing timber. Thus, it helps a lot in the paper and pulp industry for firewoods, right? Second is land reclamation. Eucalyptus is a tree which can easily grow in degraded soils, and thus it helps to prevent soil erosion and it restores the sort of fertility of the soil. Then it has been also seen that it has some nitrogen fixing properties, right? So that is the reason some studies have said that this is good for the soil. However, there are arguments also. See, the first is its invasive potential. What? See, once you have got eucalyptus, it is a very fast growing species, and then it tends to sort of destroy the native vegetation, right? So that is what the invasive potential is. Second is it has high water consumption. It depletes the groundwater. It has a lot of water consumption, and thus it takes away the aquifers. Then allelopathy. See, what is allelopathy? There have been studies which have pointed that these eucalyptus plants, they release chemicals, and these chemicals, once they interact with other plants, they inhibit their growth, right? Inhibit the growth of other plants. So that is what the allelopathy is. So what we need to see is that definitely we have got the benefits of eucalyptus, but we need to also keep in mind the impact it has on the environment, and there needs to be a balanced use for eucalyptus. Coming to the next topic, we have got that of DRDO. So it is a primary agency when it comes to the research and development in the military domain. So it is an agency which comes under the Ministry of Defense. It is charged with the research and development of military, Army, Navy and Air Force. Now, it has a network of 52 laboratories around India. It is headquartered in Delhi, and this is engaged in developing defense technologies in avionics, in missile development, right, in sort of equipments for the Air Force, in having sort of defense systems, right? So these are the systems which the DRDO focuses upon. Now, this has also been a part of, and it has led the integrated guided missile development program, which ultimately led to the development of missiles like Agni, Trishul, Prithvi, Nag, right? So that is for the development of comprehensive range of missiles. Now, apart from defense technologies, DRDO has also has played a key role during the COVID-19 crisis. How? It actually transferred technologies with respect to the N99 masks, with respect to the PPE kits, with respect to the face shields. It also transferred technology with respect to the ventilator, right? So what we see is that it has been contributing a lot to the nation's security, and it has been working sort of 24/7 to give India the edge in defense technology, and ultimately so that India can also emerge as a hub for defense exports. Coming to the next topic, we have got the country, the country of Papua New Guinea. Now this is in news because a series of flooding has occurred here. Now we'll look what this country is all about. So see, Papua New Guinea is a country on the sort of on the northern side of Australia. Now this island, if you can see, this island refers to the New Guinea Island, right? Now this is divided into two parts. The western part lies with the Indonesia, and the eastern part is an independent country which is known as Papua New Guinea, right? Now, if you look at the geography, first we'll talk about the geography. Just look that there is sort of Coral Sea, and this is the northern part of Australia. There is the Gulf of Papua. Then you have got the Torres Strait. Please remember this, right? Torres Strait. Then you have got the Huon Gulf. Then you have got the Solomon Sea, right? Please understand that this island country of Papua New Guinea is the largest island when it comes to the Pacific, South Pacific, right? Now, we have got the Bismarck Sea, right? We have got the importance of this country lies that it has a sort of a very rich biodiversity. Moreover, it has a very rich diversity when it comes to the languages, the indigenous language. There are more than 800 indigenous languages which are spoken in Papua New Guinea. So just have a basic idea about this location, because this might be important for your upcoming prelims. So I hope this discussion was fruitful. All the best. Thank you.